Okay, here we are in part 3, and it starts off and it reminds you with inductive reasoning that we just finished. We looked at examples or a pattern, and then we made a conjecture. We made a conclusion. Oh, the pattern is you add 3 every time. The pattern is that you multiply times 2 every time. So it started with an example or a pattern, and we came up with a conclusion. With deductive reasoning, we use facts, definitions, or properties. They give us the rule, and then we decide what the conclusion is for a specific example. And there's 2 kinds of deductive reasoning. The first one is called law of detachment, which is a fancy word, but basically it just goes like this. If I have a true conditional statement, if P then Q, and I know P is true, I know the if part is true, then I can say that the Q part is also true. So if I know that this if statement is true, and I know that the first part's true, then the second part's true. So let's see how that works. So here, Tom knows that if he misses the practice the day before the game, he will not be starting player on the game. That's the rule that the coach has already said. If you miss practice the day before the game, you won't be a starting player in the game. And then Tom misses practice. Well, if I know this is the rule, and this is the rule that's going to be applied, and then I know that Tom misses practice, what's going to happen? Well, he won't get to play. That's law of detachment. So I have an if-then that I know is true, and then I have a statement here. Then I can tell if the conclusion, this fits right there, and it tells me if it's going to happen or not. A different way to do it is the law of syllogism, which again, this sounds really complicated, but it's really not. It just says, here I have 2 if-thens. I have 2 if-thens. And the middle thing matches up on them. So this is how it works. If you have a horse, then you have to feed it. There's the first one. And I'm going to zoom in a little because I'm going to highlight this part so we can see it a little better. So the first one is if you have a horse, you have to feed it. Then you have another if-then statement. If you have to feed a horse, then you have to get up early every morning. One of the important parts of this is that the middle parts match. So here, then you have to feed it, matches with the first part of this, if you have to feed the horse. So those middle parts have to match up here and here. Then I can just jump from the beginning to the end. So if you have a horse, you have to get up early every morning. So it's going from the first part to the last part. If you have a horse, that's the first part of this one, then you have to get up early in the morning. That's the last part of that one. That's how that law works. So on this one, we basically have one if-then and then a fact that goes with it. Here I have 2 if-thens, and the middle part of these has to match up. So now we're going to use these 2 rules. We're going to determine if each one is which law they are and if it's true or not. So the first one says, if Jim is a Texan, then he is an American. Jim is a Texan. There's one if-then. If I have one if-then, that's a law of detachment. And I know that the first part is true. One if-then, so this is the law of detachment. Well, if I know this part is true, then he is also an American. That's the conclusion we can draw. The next one. If Spot is a dog, then he has 4 legs. Spot has 4 legs. This only has one if-then, but on here it has to match up with the first part. Does this match up with the first part? No. So I can't draw a conclusion. So I'm just going to write no conclusion. Because this first part doesn't match up. Spot could be a cat. If Rachel lives in Tampa, then Rachel lives in Florida. If Rachel lives in Florida, then Rachel lives in the U.S. two if-thens. If I have two if-thens, I'm looking at this law right here. And the middle parts have to match up. So the then part of this one has to go with this part here. Do those match up? Are they the same? They are. So I take the first part of the first one, if Rachel lives in Tampa, and I put it with the second part of the second one. Then Rachel lives in the U.S. Okay, and our fourth one here. If October 12th is a Monday, then October 13th is a Tuesday. October 12th is a Monday. One if then, so we're looking at this part here. And I need the first part to be true. Is this first part true? Yes, it is. So this is a law of detachment. And then I know October 13th is a Tuesday. By the way, this one was law of syllogism. And our last one here. If Henry studies algebra, then he will pass the test. If Henry passes the test, then he will get a good grade. This has got two if-then, so this is law of syllogism. And in order for it to work, the middle parts have to be the same. Are my middle parts the same? Yep, passes the test, passes the test. So I take the first part of the first one, if Henry studies his algebra. And then I put it with the second part of this. Then he will get a good grade. When you finish these notes, bring them to Ms. Simpson, and then she'll give you the activity for the last part. On the last part, when you do it, it looks just like what we were doing. It says, first says, use the law of detachment and draw a conclusion. So you need to write out your conclusion here and here. Then this is the law of syllogism. And then here it says, if possible, use the law of detachment. If not possible, write not possible. And then down here it says, use the law of detachment and the law of syllogism to draw a conclusion. So here you'll have to use both to draw your conclusions. When you finish these, you're going to put them on the form.